What's up, guys? Welcome back to the channel. Welcome back to the R6 track bike series. Today on the bench I've got the water pump pulled out. This is off the '05 Yamaha R6. So if you're interested in rebuilding the water pump, I'll step you through it in this video. So let me get you guys set up on the tripod so you don't have a shaky camera, and I'll go over what we're gonna do today. So hold tight. Alright guys, I got you set up on the tripod. We're gonna get going on this rebuild. So just to kind of give you a quick overview of what we got sitting in front of us, we've got the water pump split apart. We got the impeller pulled out. We got a few seals to press in. If you saw the befores, this was in pretty bad shape. The mechanical seal was just falling apart. The bearing, you know, it was sticking. It still sticks a little bit. That's even after cleaning it up. And that's why we're doing this rebuild. But I'll try to drop a few photos or a little video clip in this video while I'm editing and give you guys a before and after. But we're in pretty good shape now. Once we get these new parts in, we'll be even better. So all the parts you see here, I ordered through partzilla.com. I'll drop all the part numbers down in the descriptions below. That way you guys see what we're doing here. But I'll walk you through this step by step and what you're going to need far as tools and whatnot. We'll get on that in just a second here, so hold tight. All right guys, so step by step, tools you're going to need so far right now is just this pick tool. You are going to need a press or some type of socket. That way you can press in the new bearing and your mechanical seal and whatnot. So first things first, let's get the old O-ring off. And this is the O-ring on the side that goes into the engine. That's going to be one of your oil seals. So hold tight. Let's get this O-ring taken off. So, be mindful whenever you're using a pick and it's got a sharp point on it, you don't mar up the edges. That way you don't have any leaks. What I like to do is drive my pick into the rubber and then get it started and then just pull off the rest of the way. And you don't got to worry about scratching up the side walls or anything like that. So I just want to get this cleaned out of any debris. So I cleaned up this part prior. You always want to check your weep hole, make sure that's not clogged up. And this one was pretty clogged up with calcium buildup and some deposits right there. So always make sure you got free flowing access for that water to come out, or that coolant. All right, so we'll get the new O-ring. That's going to be your part number here. Once again, I'll drop that down in the description below. So anytime you put on new O-rings, guys, you always want to smear a light coat of grease on these. You don't want to put a dry O-ring back onto your parts. All right, that easy part's done. Now we'll move on to the next. So I'll set all my bad stuff aside. We can get this O-ring removed. The part number on that one. And just make sure the inside of this is cleaned. Okay. All right, the other easy one done. So let's get this impeller installed with its new seal. So this was the seal that came out. Had a bunch of rust forming up around this seal. This actually goes on just like this, drops down and gets pressed into that. So we'll get this all cleaned out, make sure there's no debris in there, and then we'll lube up the new one and get that pressed in. Alright guys, so what you're gonna need on this, for me, I'm using a 15mm socket, deep set, and that will allow me to get this new seal pressed in evenly around the shaft. So let's get the new seal out. And this seal comes as a set with your mechanical seal. So it's a two-part set. So it's replacing that guy there, and we'll set the mechanical seal aside just for right now. All right guys, we're gonna put a little bit of grease on this seal. We'll get this pressed in around that impeller. And we'll keep checking things off this list. So let's open up this pack. New, old. All right, you want to make sure you drive this on nice and straight. Should slip right on in. You'll feel it bottom out. You can just about press it in with your fingers like I did there. And this will just help drive it all the way down. Let me get a little rubber mallet. Okay, we're pressed in, but let me get a little tap of the mallet. Yeah, we're nice and bottomed out. All right, set that aside, set that over there. All right, now we're going to get the mechanical seal pressed in. We'll get that installed. So there's a certain way this goes in. You want to be mindful that you press it in the right way. Same with the bearing. Bearing part number. Bearings come pre-greased. Get those. So the bearing can be pressed in either way. There's no up or down on this bearing, so you don't got to worry about that. Just want to make sure this grease is evenly distributed. Okay. So we're going to put a light film of grease just before we seat this bearing. You can use coolant, your engine coolant. That's actually what they say to lube up the shaft of the impeller with when going to press it in or push it through. Okay. All right, I'm gonna get you taken over to the press and we'll get this pressed in. All right, so I got you on the press. I've got the plates stacked up. You want to make sure you're seated completely flat. It's like aluminum and it won't take much to deform this. So you want to make sure you're pressing this very carefully, that you're not going to deform or crack the housing here. So I've got a what is a 21 millimeter socket that fits just around the outer race, and I'm gonna use the manual action on this press, which is the safest way to go. And here we go. All right, and we are all the way in. Okay, I'll back that off. All right, back to the workbench. Hold tight. All right, so we're back at the workbench. Let's see if we can get a good shot of the seal. The bearing pressed in. Okay, next we want to press in this mechanical seal. That's going to drop in right inside here. We're going to have to press this in. And we want to go on this outer edge. We're going to have to find a socket that's going to allow us to push evenly around this outer edge. And there's a sealant. This blue is a pre-applied sealant around this the seat of this seal. but it also recommends putting a Yamaha 1215 around this as well. So we'll get some of that pulled out, or the equivalent, and we'll get that pressed in just a second here. Hold tight. All right, guys, so getting a few parts going. Like I said, we're going to get this mechanical seal pressed in. We'll get a little bit of that Yamaha 1215 or equivalent smeared around that. But before you press in the mechanical seal, you have to put in the oil seal. Here's your part number on that. So let's get this opened up. You can smear a little bit of coolant on here just to help press that that seal into place. And you want to make sure, since the seal is excuse me, the seal is not the same, you want to push. You can see a little spring inside there. The spring faces outwards. So if you're putting it in from this side, you could also put it in before you push the bearing in. For me, it's easier because it allows you to have a stop once you press this in. But it seats just in this direction right here. So we'll get this grease smeared around it. And this is your oil seal, which seals around the shaft. All right, and we're in there. So this sits just flush with this inside rim here. You guys can see inside there. Let me see if this will focus. And you can see the weep hole. All right, hold tight. All right, guys, so we got that seal pressed in. We're gonna get a little bit of that Yamaha on the bottom side where the blue is. You don't need a whole lot. Just a little bit smeared on all the way around. All right, so I got this on there. I'm gonna go ahead and set this up to drop right in. Get it started a little bit. All right, so I found me a 27 millimeter socket. And what's nice about this is this fits right over the edge. Let's see if you can see this. You want to basically just press on this outer silver rim with your socket. And with this, that's what I'm doing. So let's give it a few taps with the rubber mallet. almost seated all the way down. Just a little bit of a lip. I'm gonna have to change out my socket now. Alright guys, so I found something that worked perfectly. Let me get you guys a little bit of a perspective on this. So we were coming up a little short using the socket. The socket started to catch and bottom out on this outer rim here, which didn't allow me to drive it any further. So this last little step, I wasn't seated all the way down past this little step. So I actually found something that worked perfect, like it was meant to be. My rear wheel bearing kit has this bearing sleeve that fit perfectly around the inner springs there, and it's thin enough to where it's not catching this outer diameter. It's just dropping perfectly inside that channel. So if you see this here on this old one, it's just enough to catch, and it's not overly large to where it's going to Alright guys, so if you want an exact size, let me give you what worked perfect. If you're driving that seal in, you got about 35 millimeters outer diameter, so you can't exceed that outer diameter, because then you're going to start hitting these outer edges. And then inside, to give you your clearance, you are roughly 28 millimeters on the inside. So 28 and 35 is what you need. All right, moving on to the next step, guys. We're almost there. Hold tight. All right, guys, last but not least, we're gonna get this impeller pressed through. Got a little bit of grease on there. We're gonna slide this in. And there you have it. So what we need to do with this, you can see that mechanical spring inside there working. So we got to get that little circlip clip back on. All right, guys. Last but not least, we're going to get this clip installed around the shaft. So what you're going to need to do with this is you're going to need to drive the shaft upwards to expose. Can you see that? Right there. To expose that groove, and that's where that clip sits around. So let me see if I can keep you guys in frame while I do this. All right, we are clipped on. Ready to go. All right, so we'll put the two halves back together. Little bead of grease around the rubber seal. We'll mate the two halves as we press this back onto the bike. I do have, we'll clean up this bolt. I do have a new bolt for this and a new crush washer. All right, hold tight. All right, guys, I'm actually gonna call that a wrap. So, as far as the water pump rebuild, I think we covered all of our bases with the new O-rings, the new seals, the new bearing, getting the impeller installed. So all we have left to do is mount this to the bike. So you're gonna put a little grease on this O-ring, and then as you press this into the bike, you want to line this slot with the water pump or the oil pump that's inside, and that's what's actually driving the impeller for the water pump. So they kind of work hand in hand. And then yeah, you want to get your bolts installed, your crush washer in the appropriate hole, connect your hoses back up, and you're good to go. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. Stay tuned for the next one. I've got a ton of things lined up. I got a box full of goodies we still got to go through. We got to check the valve clearances next. I still got to pull off the steering stem, get the new bearings installed. The list goes on. Catch you guys on the next one. Have a good night.